Good morning, members, and welcome to the meeting of the Social Work Services Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. Remote participants, please follow this good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat other contributions made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including any votes that will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track of whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have several reports to consider today, and I anticipate that we will indeed deal with the business in our usual efficient manner. Item 1, Sir Redundant and apologies, and the Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you please provide the Sir Redundant indicating who is participating remotely and any other apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got 18 present this morning. That's 8 in the Council Hall, 10 on Teams. The members present on Teams are Councillors Bell, Karen Crothers, Davis, Heavy, Jameson, Jordan, Little, McFarlane, Stevenson and Young. Currently not present are Councillors Dorward, Ingalls and Wood. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I can confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Good morning, Willie. And so we also have an apologies from David Ingalls, please, Claire. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? I have Emma Jordan to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies, it's not a declaration of interest, it's just to pass Linda Dorward's apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordan, that's noted. Item number 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, which took place on the 15th of June 2023, chaired by Councillor Hill. The meeting is for approval. Are members all happy to approve? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, obviously you weren't here last time, but in item 9 last time there was a motion put forward that was then deemed incompetent, but it was a motion proposed and seconded. But then, after advice from governance, the chair at the time actually ruled it incompetent. Surely that is, I appreciate there's a difference of opinion whether that should be in the minutes or not, but that was a decision made at that committee. So in my view, it should be recorded. But I'm happy to be guided by governance on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for that. I don't know whether we need to go into recess to look at standing orders for that, but I'll just check with governance if that's okay with yourself. Thank you. Claire.
Okay, thank you. The minutes, that the members will be aware the style of our minutes are there to record decisions made by this committee. That would be a procedural matter. I guess there's if members were reminded, the minute could be amended to include that. So leave it with members.
Any other comments from members? Yes, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I may take a different view from what Councillor Ferguson and Andy's saying in that one. There was no decision taken. We moved on to next business. So we did. So there was no decision taken by the committee, nor was there a challenge to the chair on the motion that was put forward. But there was no decision taken as to its competence or otherwise. There was advice for governance, but then we moved on to next business.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. It's my opinion as Chair today that we move on with the meeting today. I, as chair, will have a discussion after this meeting, if that's acceptable for yourself, Councillor Ferguson, and we'll get back to you. It's a matter of governance, and they're agreeing with myself if you're okay with that, but I would be happy to take it up with you after this meeting.
I'm still clearly of the view that the chair on the day the vice chair actually made a decision. So it was a decision of this committee. If the chair rules, that's a part of the decision of the committee. The committee doesn't have to make a decision. The chair can do it on her behalf.
I'll go back to yourself, Claire.
Okay. It's certainly not custom and practice for this council to minute actually at every time the advice is given, but the minutes are very succinct in that they record the actual decisions taken by the committee.
Thank you, Claire. So, Councillor Ferguson, we've made a decision. We will record it if that's acceptable to yourself and governance. Yep, can we move on to the next? You happy with that, Councillor Ferguson? Right. Item number 4, revenue budget monitoring for period ending 30th of June 2023. This report presents an overview of the financial performance for the end of quarter one to the 30th of June 2023. Janet Sutton is available to answer any questions. Members? Emma Jordan. Councillor Jordan, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question about the residential placements. They've increased, and I wanted to ask why they've increased in cost and number, reference 4.3 and 4.10. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. Could I pass that over to Janet for her answer, please?
Thank you, Chair. The number of placements have increased in both in number of young people that we've placed, and the cost of those places have also increased above the budgeted level.
Thank you very much, Janet. Could I ask yourself to come in, Stephen, on the back of that? Thank you.
Yeah, just an update for members. Currently, we actually have 3 less children and young people in placement, but the costs are still projected to be significantly higher, as Janet has just explained. The reason for that is the Scotland Excel framework has increased placement costs quite significantly, but also what the framework doesn't take into account is any additional needs that children and young people might have. So the needs that we're paying for on top of the Scotland Excel charges are quite considerable. So even with 3 less children, the costs have gone up quite significantly, approximately 25% from last year to this year per average placement. Difficult to say average placement because every child's different. So really it's the external costs that we have very little control or no control over that has made the difference to the overspend there.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are you okay with that, Councillor Jordan? Can we move on?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mail, it was in next.
Yeah. Chair, it's 411. The further potential pressure for care for the up to 21-year-old. I see there's an implication of this in a review, but is the review going to cover several years? Because I would think that this, as we go into the future, will build quite significantly, because the number of children that will, or young people that will stay in care for a period of time in the next 5-6 years, with added on the bottom, could be quite serious. So I presume the review will take into account sort of really looking forward for many years.
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor Mail. Can I pass that over to yourself, Stephen Morgan? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. The short answer is yes, it absolutely will be looking at what the costs are. Children and young people will choose to stay in care or not, so we need to know what the full costs are for Dumfries and Galloway Council, and we need to make sure that, you know, that the policy change is properly reflected, and we can use COSLA as a body to communicate with the Scottish Government about the increased costs that we've incurred because of the change in legislation.
Yes, it was a good question, Councillor Mail. We had discussed that pre-committee, so that's the plan going forward, because that is going to have to be the strategy used here. I'd like to move on to, we're going in the order that everybody asked the question. Councillor Scobie, I can see you looking. So we have Councillor Stevenson next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Stephen. You know, we sit in this committee quite often, and you know, we hear social work is under more and more pressure. Now, on the appendix, under Children and Family Social Care, Assessment and Fieldwork, the base budget's actually less than the final outrun. My concern is, and I suppose it's probably more for political parties, is that are we actually funding social work properly? Because this is a real concern. That, you know, we're now at an outrun of potentially £650,000, and I think it's something that we need to look at and maybe push back to full council to make a decision on. Thank you.
Yeah, very good points, Councillor Stevenson. We had discussed that before the meeting as well a number of days ago, and it's definitely something we're going to have to push through the Scottish Government and costless, and bring it to full council. So we're in agreement with you with regards to that, I would say, but I will have confirmation from Stephen if that's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Stevenson. It's a difficult one because obviously at the start of every year the council presents a balanced budget, and almost immediately the social work budget starts to show an overspend. That's partly because of the changeable nature of what we do, the individual need, etc. And almost all of the overspend is on placements that are out with Dumfries and Galloway that we purchase from private providers, whether that's for adults in terms of health and social care partnership, or children for the non-delegated services, which we have primary responsibility for today. So we quickly then move into what we call the realignment process, and the realignment looks at the nitty-gritty. And for me, we have to start looking at me, as the Chief Social Work Officer of my team, have to start looking at the nitty-gritty when we're setting the budget to make sure it more accurately reflects what we need if there are indeed discrepancies. But in relation to the Scottish Government and policy changes, of which there are a number referenced here and elsewhere, we do have to make sure that any policy change comes with the appropriate level of finance.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are you happy with that, Councillor Stevenson? Okay, we'll move on.
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Little, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions on page 14 at 4.9. It's regarding the fostering fees. Has the fostering fee rise, has it been working? Have we managed to recruit more since we did that? Also, what are we doing to recruit additional foster carers? If you could maybe talk me through that. And finally, the last sentence of that paragraph, it says, while a number of new foster carers were recruited during 22-23, which has been well received by foster carers in the region, there has been no increase in overall capacity across D&G due to the cessation of some previous arrangements. A wee explanation on that would be great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Little. I see in 4.9, the last sentence, further works continuing to be progressed by the service to address this pressure on an ongoing basis. So that is being addressed, but for more detail, I'll go over to yourself, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Councillor Little. Has it worked? Yes, it has. Even though our overall numbers haven't grown, we've brought new carers into the service. The reason why we've lost some is primarily through retirements and, like natural reasons why people can no longer foster. What I would say is that hasn't actually assisted the budget position because those carers have effectively replaced provision that was elsewhere. But what we have done is we've reduced the reliance on external placements, which cost tens of £1,000s more than what our own placements do. So hopefully that answers the first 2 questions. And I might have got them in the wrong order, so apologies for that. So the middle question, which is what are we doing to recruit? We had an excellent recruitment campaign around about the time of the last committee meeting, and many elected members were involved in that and showed up to some of the sessions, which was fantastic, and that help was appreciated. So we continue to do big events like that, but we've also got continuous social media and other ways to do that. We use newspapers, we use the radio locally, and we continue to do that. We think the dripping tap approach and the focused approach is the best way to do this. Clearly, the fee has helped because it's managed to bring people in. We've lost less than we had done in previous years, so it's one of those scenarios that it's always challenging, but I do believe that it's been a success.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the work that you all did as a team with regards to the recruitment, which I attended, and it was most enlightening actually to see that happening, and there was a massive press campaign that took place as well. So I think it is a drip feed situation, but hopefully we can see progression going forward. It is very challenging, as we all understand in the room. Can I just ask Councillor Jameson, are you wishing to come back in, or is it a legacy hand you have?
No, I'm wishing to come in, thanks.
You wish to come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Is it okay if I go ahead with Councillor Scobie next, and then we'll come back to yourself, because he's been waiting for a while?
Absolutely no problem. No problem at all.
Councillor Jameson. Councillor Scobie, please.
I'm sure you could have taken George there, but it doesn't matter, you've called me. I'm looking at this, and this is up to the June report in terms of the budget and the budget situation. And it's really on the back of what Paula was saying there. And as I understand it, there's, from COVID, there have been a number of families come forward, a number of families that have been identified, and that has increased substantially. And indeed, the proportionately the same isn't the same for a number of social workers to deal with these. So I would imagine the caseload is increasing exponentially to that. And it's really, you know, that whole 650,000, and whether indeed the pressure that's on the department just now, social work, whether it does require, and I hear you saying, Chair, that you'll take this to the Scottish Government, to COSLA and to full council, because I think now's the time in the whole budget process to be looking at this in terms of how we do fund, because it would be legal requirement, is my understanding, and perhaps we could hear from the acting chief social worker whether, you know, things are still going in that direction, and that we really should be doing something now in terms of the whole budgetary situation, and doing it pretty quickly if the whole trend is going the other way, that we're going into an overspend. And it's not that it's not required, it's to meet our legal requirements. And it's really, yeah, to push for that and to be ahead of the game, if you like, just to see that we do need further budget on this, or people are going to suffer out there badly.
Councillor Scobie, I take your points on board, and that was the very questions we were asking of the Social Work Department last week, and they have acknowledged that. So I do understand where you're coming from entirely. We've got to start pushing now. There isn't time for any delay. So, but I'll get confirmation from Stephen, because I believe he's already proactive in that department. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Scobie, thanks for the question. And I'm glad that you raised the issue of social workers' caseloads, because it's one that we've been concerned about for quite some time locally, and we're increasingly concerned now. And as members will probably be aware, there was a piece of research carried out and a report published by Social Work Scotland, along with colleagues in the SSSC, called Setting the Bar. I'll have to double check that was colleagues in the SSSC. People on the right will keep me right. And what that showed us what an indicative caseload for social workers who do different types of social work should be in order to meet the legal and the policy objectives of local government, of Scottish Government rather, and how local government deliver that. Now, we're currently, when I say we, colleagues to the right are currently doing some extensive work to map out, you know, what the caseloads and the workload for all of our social workers in adult social care, justice and children's services would be. We're going to present an initial report to the senior leadership team of the council, I think on the 18th of September, and that will set out what the caseload should look like to meet the objectives of the legislation and the policy drivers. And we will then map alongside that what that would mean in terms of the amount of workers we would need to do the job well, because the point that you made about the pressure that's on the staff delivering frontline services and then the impact that has on budget later down the line is an absolutely correct one, because if we can't do the preventative and the early intervention work that we do well, and we can't do enough of it, we will get higher cost expenditure later on. What I will add though, because you asked a specific question about since COVID, have the numbers gone up and are the staff more busy? The short answer is yes, and I think that's evidenced in the Chief Social Work Officer report, which comes later in the agenda. What we have managed to do from a children's side, so this doesn't touch justice and it doesn't touch adult social work, is obviously we've used additional funding from the council, and we've also used additional funding from the Scottish Government to meet the promise But that's brought in extra non-qualified staff because we know we can recruit them locally, which eases the burden in terms of early intervention, effective intervention. That work's overseen by our social workers. So we have an increase in staff. It's not that it's been a standstill, but we don't have the professional staff. And that's a national issue. So we're also looking at, as we discussed in the last committee, the workforce issues and how we can look at a better offer for social workers who come in terms of the starting point and end point of your career and a single process. So that work should be concluded. Avril? Yeah, so that's in hand. So it is a constant pressure. It's one we're aware of, but we will use the research that we're doing currently in relation to what our social work caseloads are like, and we will feed that into the budget setting system, and that's a decision then for politicians to make if there's a significant difference.
Yes, Councillor Scobie, if you'd like to come back in, thank you.
Thanks for letting me back, Chair. And that's a pretty comprehensive answer. Because that additional funding from COVID will not be there to use to via or whatever. So there's going to be a difficulty there in the first instance. But if it's helpful, I remember that some years ago, and it was a professor or whatever from London that we brought in to look at caseload. And the recommendation at that time was about 65, if memory served me correctly, where social work in this region was running into something about 100 cases. And yet the recommendation was that it should be no higher than 65, but it should be even less than 65, if my memory serves me correctly. But I'm sure there will be a trace of that. And we brought someone in, as I say, I think it was from London, to advise the committee in terms of what social workers should be running to actually be effective. So it would be good to get a report back on the actual, not just to advise budget, but to advise the committee just how much pressure the department is under. And it can be reflected in caseload, casework, and how effective that's been when it exceeds the recommended, or as Stephen has said, what could be regarded as legislation.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Scobie. I absolutely take your points on board. And I think the other thing we've been speaking about, which I think members can probably all agree on today, is in that report as well, Stephen, if possible, if we could look at how the Grow Your Own scheme is doing because of the national situation with regards to recruiting social workers. It's really challenging at the moment. So that would be great if you could do all of that at the same time for this committee. But I'll let you come in. Thank you, Stephen.
Yep, thanks again. We will absolutely bring a report back to the October committee based on the workload and the pressures of the service. And we can bring in the success of the Grow Your Own and some small changes, but significant changes we've made currently to our practice and how that's assisted. So we'll bring that in October. We'll have a comprehensive set of information for children's social work, adult social work, and also our justice social work staff as well in terms of where we are. And I'll just say the numbers you quoted, Councillor Scobie, are significantly out of date, and we will bring the new ones to you because the caseloads are much, much lower than that to reflect the additional complexity of what social workers and social care workers deal with in the modern world.
Thank you, Stephen. Interesting, though. Thank you for your points, Councillor. You can get cream for that, Councillor Scobie. Could I just point out that I've got yourself next, Councillor Wilson, but do you mind if I let Councillor Jameson back in with his legacy hand first? Thank you.
It was my first hand, just for clarification, but that doesn't matter. Firstly, Stephen, I have to say I'm hugely grateful for the work that you and your team do. I think it's hugely complex, really difficult, and amazing, really. And we don't see even part of that, so it's fantastic the work that you do. I'm also congratulating you on the fact that over 98% of your staff are on permanent contracts, which I think is a real commitment to your staff and your people, and I hope we can shift that same ambition to some of the other services. I'm really appreciative of the fact that you take on people full time and you train them. My particular question and query is reference page 15, 4.11, and it's regarding really the fact that we have to look after up to 21-year-old young people. Social services don't stand in isolation, and the education report last the last meeting suggested that over 90% of looked after children find positive destinations. I would like to know what these positive destinations are, and I'll follow that up, because when a child reaches 16, they could be sitting exams, they could be going to college, they could be leaving school, they could be going into work. So I'm interested in how closely I work with Skills Development Scotland, developing the young workforce, and indeed the education careers advisors on such things as curriculum, opportunities for children with disadvantages and just children that are from poorer families. I've got further questions, but I'll stick them to on the agenda item 5 because they're more relevant there. But all of the things I've mentioned really come under the budget, the council's forward plan. So really, I'm asking, how much help are you getting to actually offer opportunities for these young people to live independent lives, and by implication, it possibly would reduce the amount of money that you have to pay out on looking after them up until they're 21.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. I'll pass this over to Stephen, and apologies from myself for missing your hand up earlier. Sorry for that. Thank you.
That's no problem.
Councillor Jameson, thanks for the question. And in relation to the continuing care legislation, the continuing care legislation is relatively limited in terms of what we have to do from a social care perspective. And in my opinion, it doesn't properly take into account other pieces of legislation around access to education, etc., as well as it might. So it is really around continuing in your care placement if you choose to do so, and the costs for that. We already have some other responsibilities and duties for care leavers, whereby we as a council can pay for accommodation fees at university, further education, etc., and we do that well. So this element is specifically around their care needs and in their current placement, and to extend that beyond the age of 18, which it would currently be at. So you asked also about some of the interlinking things there, and I think what I would suggest, if it's acceptable to yourself, is that we will pick up those positive destination issues in the council seminar on the 8th of September. That's looking at corporate parenting, and we've got a lot of detail in there about positive destinations, some statistics on things like teenage pregnancies, jail populations and the like from a general perspective. So that'll give us an opportunity to really delve into some of those issues if that's acceptable. Would that be okay?
Yes, that would be fantastic, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Finally, Councillor Wilson, thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 14 at 4.4, it says there could be a pressure from the fostering fee implementation and that it's not been addressed yet. Just wondering if we had a rough idea how much that could be. And on page 15 at 4.11, regarding the continuing care until 21, which is absolutely right. I'm just wondering if there was additional funding from the Scottish Government for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. We've covered it a little bit, but you're right to ask in more detail. So if I could ask the first question to be addressed to yourself, Janet. She's not here, I should be looking at the screen. Sorry. For yourself, Janet. And then for the second question, Councillor Wilson will go to Stephen. Thank you. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you, Chair. The family placement service is currently projected to overspend by the 250,000.
Thank you for that. And Stephen, second question. Thank you.
No. That's as brief as I've ever been.
Yeah, that's what I think we need to be trying to address, shall we say. And lastly, before we close this item, I think we have Councillor Ferguson. Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's handy being last because sometimes other folk have asked half your questions. Just a couple of things. One clarification in one at 4.11 about the up to age 21. I thought it was age 26. Is it just a misprint?
No, we've got different duties up until the age 26,
yeah.
But this is specifically for the care placement cost. So, like I said, the legislation landscape's messy, is the best way to describe it. So we have additional duties where we can pay some costs, and up to 26, but this is specifically around the care placement. If they want to stay in that beyond, it's actually age 16 in law, and it goes up to 21 now, which extends that period.
Okay, that's kind of the answer I expected, Stephen, thanks. So that means then when they reach 21, up to age 26, they'll go into housing benefit?
Yeah, if they're in...
So they are catered for in that period where they're still covered by parts of the legislation, but not other parts. Maybe it's maybe a bit of clarification, it might have made it clearer for people who don't understand the system. Might have been in there. My substantive question, though, is you know, I can see there's a potential overspend of 650k. Now, I know, and I've worked with you in the past and worked with some of the officers in here in the past, you don't know what's come through the door in 10 minutes' time, never mind 10 months' time. But we're at 650k potential overspend now in the first quarter's reporting. So the question really is, whilst we would expect you as managers to manage that budget within your existing budgets, and you have a support fund which is up to £1 million. I suppose the question really is for future years, and this is for future budget development, I would suggest, is that £1 million social work support fund realistic? Because it was put in place, what, 4 or 5 years ago, right? And you kind of buy nearly as much now for £1 million as you could 4 or 5 years ago. So do we need to, rather than having to go cap in hand, for lack of a better words, to FPT in January and say we're needing more money now because the costs are just such that we can't afford to meet them within our normal service budget. So I think really the plea is, you know, can we make sure that that is included in the budget development talks as we go forward, because it is contingency. You don't have to spend it; it's there if you need it, and that would take a lot of the weight off you, particularly when you've got to make some really hard, serious decisions about what you're going to fund and you're not going to fund, and to what extent you're going to fund. I just wonder what your views would be on that.
Okay, thanks for the question. It's complicated. I mean, obviously you can't buy the same amount of whatever with £1 million now as what you could 5-6 years ago when decisions were made. However, we've never dipped into that £1 million budget significantly. The council as a whole have ordinarily found savings elsewhere at the end of the financial year to assist. Sometimes additional money might come in, so we've not had to utilise that. But you're right by saying, you know, we're predicting that £650,000 overspend now, but if we have more children in placement, for example, that just grows exponentially. The £650,000 figure is looking at the full costs if all of those children remain in the current placements at the current level of support that they currently have. Now, last year, the average amount of weeks any child was in placement was around about 30 weeks, so it wasn't a full 52 for all sorts of different reasons. So we would expect that figure to sometimes bulge and sometimes shrink depending on individual needs. So right now it's our best projected figure, and it's based on actual spend, but some of those children's needs might reduce, so some of them will have 2-to-1 support in complex environments. Some children in secure care, which costs more money because of the nature of that, they will come out of secure care quickly. I'm looking at my head of children's services over there. You know, we're actively doing that. So it does change. For us, though, I think I mentioned, you know, the realignment process that takes place, and there's some really good detailed information in there. And I think we have to feed that quite positively into the budget setting, which I think will allay some of the concerns that several members have had this morning. And if we deem that, you know, that 1 million safety fund, if I call it that, needs to be greater, then we would certainly suggest that, and then it's a decision that needs to be made. But right now, I would be saying no because we've never touched it. You know, and we've been in worse predicted positions than this in recent years, and we've come out, you know, in a more better position at the end of the year.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate as well, we've had the backlog of COVID, which has also been difficult. And if you look at the rest of the report, you know, we're not sitting in too bad a position apart from these budgetary questions. But if you'd like to come back in, Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, exactly. Willie touched on it earlier, is that some of the COVID recovery money will disappear soon, right? So the pressure is not going to be like it's been in the last couple of years, because there were mitigations there either from Scottish Government or UK Government, and be fair, right? They will no longer be there. And if I remember all the way through COVID, we were told that the increase of people who traditionally would never have been close to asking for council services for support just mushroomed, right? So we've not hit the point yet, and that's the bit I'm getting at, is we really need to look now, rather than when we reach that point, to make sure that we've got a proper contingency in place. That was the point I was trying to make. And Willie is absolutely right in terms of the mushroom and the demand for services. So people traditionally who would never have been close to the social work department or the benefits team in the council, yeah, and they've been, and they're there, and they're not going away, because they're not seeing anything on the horizon that's going to change that.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Ferguson. I take your points on board, as do the committee. So we'll get back to you in October with an updated report. So, members, are we ready to move on? I don't think there's any other questions. So we can now go to the we can now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to note? Thank you very much, everybody. 2.1, the budget realignment approach that has been undertaken with the Social Work Services Management Team to ensure that the budgets reflected for each service function represent planned income and expenditure levels for the year ahead, as detailed in sections 4.1 to 4.5. And 2.2, the initial monitoring information at the end of June has highlighted that the current increases in demand currently being faced by the service are estimated to result in the social work services budget being overspent by 650k, as detailed in the appendix at the end of the financial year. Are members happy to note? Thank you. We'll move on. So item number 5, the Social Work Services Plan 2023 to 24. This report presents the service plan which provided the performance framework for delivering the outcomes which are within the remit of social work services, which directly support the service delivery of the council plan. A lot of progress has been made, and a lot of the actions and projects have been completed, and that will be reflected in the next report to the committee, as previously discussed. However, members, could you please note that, could I attract your attention to page number 26, well, page 2 of the report, pardon me. We now have a new page, which is 7 paragraphs in total, and we will put that up. Are we going to put that up on the screen, Claire? Yeah. And also, should members wish a copy of it, we can send it out afterwards. But could I just give you all a few minutes to read that before we move on, because it is a slight change from the initial. Too small. Willie, you can get up and move across.
Mine has got copies.
Oh, we've got some copies here to be passed around. Thank you very much. And for members online, you should be able to see it on the screen. Thank you.
And just while members are reading that, the purpose for the change is the narrative here just gives a little bit more detail in relation to what the service does. So that's why it's here. It doesn't actually change anything in relation to the performance framework and the detail that comes later.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to read that? Thank you, members. So, are you okay, Councillor Mail? I can see Councillor Scobie was scooting through it there. 100 miles an hour. So we have Avril Dickey, Gillian Graveston, Rebecca Aldridge and Alison Penman present to assist. Do members have any questions? Yes, Councillor Scobie, go ahead.
The audit paper is interesting, and you know, I wouldn't object to the principle or the principles or empowering the people that we deal with through social work. But as social work cases increase or case load increases, likewise for me, the complexity of the cases that I'm dealing with get more and more difficult to deal with. And it's, you know, great we have a plan, a service plan, but it's how I deal with those individuals that come to me and ask, you know, for their help or whatever. And I'm not going to quote any of the cases. And you know, there are some parts of health and well-being. People have access to high quality, affordable housing that supports their independence, prosperity and well-being. When we're facing a housing crisis in Dumfries and Galloway, and particular acute west of the region in Stranraer and the surrounding area, and it's how we deal with these things, you know, and it's fine putting it down on paper, but when you get the reality that appear, and they'll appear multiple at your door as they do at mine, but it's the whole complexity of this and the plan to reflect, and to what Andy was saying, you know, is the £1 million fund really enough, because you don't know what's coming through your door and so forth. You know, we're really in serious times, and the plan at least says this is what we'll aim to do. But does it reflect reality in terms of what's going on out there? You know, and it's okay saying we're going to empower more people when you ain't got a penny in your pocket. And you're wondering, you know, am I going to get the kid up for school the next day with only food in his belly? You know, it's the reality of what's out there in the community just now. So, yeah, I welcome the report, the plan and everything else, but it's a reflection of reality.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Scobie. I'm going to pass this to Stephen, who will then pass it on to Alison. Thanks.
I fully accept it's not a criticism, and I did say I would stay quiet for this item and hand over to my team, and I will do that. But what I must do for this committee is give you assurances. Whilst I'm Interim Chief Social Work Officer for Dumfries and Galloway Council, any vulnerable human being who requires support and assistance, we will give that regardless of the financial position of the service. That assurance has been given by my predecessor, and that will be given by myself. So, yes, we don't know what's coming through the door. The budget position is one of a significant overspend already, but that will not stop us from meeting the needs of vulnerable people. I'm just going to hand over to Alison, because some of the other points, Councillor Scobie, are around how we as a service interact with other parts of the council and actually partners out with. So, Alison, if you could just explain a little bit about the seminar around corporate parenting, because that's really the bit about how we influence housing for care leave as an example. So, I'll hand over to yourself.
Yes, so we are looking forward to seeing you in September for our seminar on corporate parenting duties. We do have a corporate parenting group where accommodation and housing is a key priority for our corporate parenting plan, which is just about to be reviewed and updated. We'll be doing that over the next few months. We inevitably have to work in partnership with our colleagues across the council, but across the partnership within NHS and police as well, to be looking at how we can best support our families based on individualised assessments of needs and based on their individual needs, because no family within our region has the same needs as any other. Obviously, we have challenges in relation to the rurality, and those challenges are more in some areas than they are in others, and we recognise that. So part of what we have to do is look at how we can build better partnerships across the region, across Dumfries and Galloway, based on where our families live and based on where the need is. So that doesn't provide you with the full answers, but we are looking very closely at how we organise ourselves as a service so that we can develop better partnership arrangements, closer working relationships, so that we can meet those individualised needs as we assess them.
Thank you, Alison. I think we're very much looking forward to the seminar, which will give us a lot more of an indication as to how we're moving forward. And as councillors, I know we've all been speaking to the teams across the council with regards to modular housing units and portable housing units, and looking in a different direction, really, because I think we've got to be as dynamic as that going forward. And we're sometimes, Scotland's always a little bit slightly further behind, but we get there in the end. But it's very positive going forward. Hopefully we can work as hard as we can with the teams available. So I've got Councillor Jameson, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm referencing page 31 of this paper, looking at reference 13.1 and 14.3. But again, we're looking here at partnerships, collegiate working, all the rest of it. 13.1 refers to support for the delivery of education model that meets the needs of the most vulnerable, particularly around care experience in children and young people, including alternative curriculum required. And at 14.4, develop the role and responsibilities of corporate parents, which you've already mentioned, ensuring our children looked after and young people are provided with the opportunities and life chances they deserve. Again, I want to dig a little deeper. These are hugely challenging affairs, and referring to corporate parenting and the opportunities for more vulnerable children. Statistics tell us that only 45% of children in the lowest SIMD reach the required levels of literacy in primary school. And secondly, in numeracy, it's something like 56%. Now, the corporate parenting, I think, is really, really important to that, because children from poorer families or in care don't have the representation that for children and young people are when they've got parents at higher levels of affluence. The alternative curriculum, working with careers advice, subject choices, parental support or quasi support through corporate parenting is really important to these young people. I don't think they're getting it. The gap is not closing an equity gap, and that increases the life chances of vulnerable young people. So your seminar will answer some of these questions, but I'm really keen that we seek to address the gap in attainment between looked after children and poorer children. It's really important that we realise that there's a lot more to do.
Yeah, I take on board your points, Councillor Jameson. I think I'll quickly pass you to Alison, but I think we really need to focus on the seminar that's coming up, because a lot of these questions will be answered during that seminar, if that's acceptable to yourself, because the teams have done a lot of work on that and it's due to come up soon. Thank you.
No, I look forward to that.
I mean, again, I would refer to our previous point. We need to be able to look at children as individuals in relation to their individual needs. And that's about how we organise ourselves to work as closely with our educational and other partners as we can. So that includes looking at the role of social works in terms of how we fit into schools and how we support schools and how we can support some alternatives to curricular activities. Again, looking at the child's holistic needs and how those needs can best be met. So it's really difficult to expand other than we need to look at children on an individual basis, and we need custom-made plans for each of these children, because no two children's needs are the same. And again, we will come back to how we look at that as part of the seminar. Obviously, education attainment is a key priority for our corporate parenting plan. It has been and it will continue to be moving forward. We work closely with education in terms of looking at initiatives and how we can use additional funding streams that are being presented to us, so that we can look at joint approaches to making sure that these children are included and that we are closing that attainment gap. So it is always at the very top of our priorities, and we work so closely with education as when we're trying to achieve this.
Thank you very much for that. And moving on to Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On reading this article here under health and well-being, it says people have access to high-quality, affordable housing that supports their independence and prosperity. But on the figures here, homeless applications have risen by 25% since last year, I believe, and 524 live cases. What I'm really saying is, do we have to look at new ways of housing? You have to look to the future and you have to think out the box. And this whole system, the system working with partners, housing partners, and trying to get things done, you're in a third-party situation there. I don't know if that's a legal situation or not, but I think in the future we have to look at building possibly units which can be built quite easily. Many years ago in the last war, apparently, they built prefabs, and some of them are still working to this day. So I believe that to build accommodation and to make accommodation available for some people, this you might think out of the box in some ways, but there's 2 million shipping containers lying around the world doing nothing. Now, these are being turned into housing now, very, very good houses. So I think that you should be looking at going down a different track here, because these figures are going to continue to rise and more people are going to become homeless. So it's basically think to the future and think out of the box. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sage. I think we have alluded to that, but thanks for your points. I'll just quickly pass you over to Stephen as he has a comment to make on that.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, Councillor Slater, and some very good comments there in terms of the housing situation and the increase in homelessness. For this plan, this is our contribution to easing homelessness and housing situations. So, for example, in the Health and Social Care Partnership, which our adult social work service sits within, we'll be looking at specific needs for adults with learning disabilities, adaptations for people with disabilities, older people with chronic needs around frailty, etc. From a children's perspective, we have to influence the availability of supported accommodation, appropriate accommodation, single bedroom units, etc. And we do that by being part of the Strategic Housing Partnership and looking at how we move that plan forward. So for us, that's a key part to make sure that the most vulnerable citizens have access to the best kind of housing. But it's not primarily our responsibility. We feed into that. So I think we need to continue to have a strong voice in those different environments as we move forward, and totally take on point what you're saying.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are you happy with that? I think what I would like to say is this has come up at Communities Committee. It was myself that visited a company in Dalbeattie, and we are discussing modular housing and other options at the moment, David, and Councillor Slater, pardon me, I don't want it to go off the agenda, and I think hearing from Stephen, it's not going to go off the agenda, so we'll make sure we keep the pressure on.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Councillor Ferguson, please.
Andy's fine, yeah. A couple of things. I'm looking at the actual plan itself, and first question is on page 4. I think it's a dead simple answer. The payment to other bodies, is that only for children? Because I know the IGB money is a lot more than that. So I'm assuming that's only children, the 10,522 payment to other bodies?
Yeah. Sorry, Andy, we're not quite hearing you. Sorry to ask you to repeat again, please.
Right, okay, I'll go back to him. I'll start again. If you look at page 28, in the expenses, the budget estimate summary service analysis, payment to other bodies, 10.5 million, give or take £1. Now, I'm assuming, and I'm just seeking clarification, that's only childcare, given that we transfer something like 60 million or thereabout to the IGB. So it would have been handy if it had been just clear there, so people know it's childcare, external childcare. So then, because that then really highlights why we need to have a real control of that budget, because it's the biggest expenditure we've got after our staffing in terms of childcare. So so it was just for clarity for folk. Yeah, so I'm quite happy. I see Stephen's nodding, so I'm assuming that's what it is. My questions really though are, I'm looking at the on page 5, which is page 29, the pay band of employees. 75% of your staff are on bands that don't equate to social workers. That's 75% of your staff. When we're having this seminar, can we ask, including in that seminar, that we have a breakdown of the age and retention figures, for example, in non-social workers? So, because some of them, and what roles they're carrying out, because we know from previous committees that some of them are actually carrying out quasi-social work roles. And again, it's the same with the case list. It's pointless only looking at the social workers' caseload without looking at the support workers' caseload at the same time. So, and and again, how many are qualified or, again, qualified in a relevant discipline that would that actually, we can't call them not qualified because they've got SVQ 4s and 5s and God knows all what, which are just, I better be careful here because I'm getting shot daggers. You could almost say are as important as the social work qualification, but to those individuals they are. And so, you know, when we're doing that seminar, can we get that kind of detail in? And I mean, one of the reasons, and I totally appreciate Pauline wanting to try to keep the business going here, but if we do it at a seminar, it's not in a record. If we do it at committee, it isn't a record. So sometimes we just have to ask the daft questions here. But just a comment for Stephen or some of the team, I'd be on if we can include that in the seminar.
Totally understand where you're coming from, Andy. I'll just pass it over to Stephen and ask that very question. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. This budget is for the non-delegated services, so it is predominantly children's social work, and the other bodies are predominantly the placements that we purchased that we've already discussed at length today. The seminars for corporate parenting to look at your role as councillors, what should be expected of you as councillors in relation to your corporate parenting duties, also what that means for officers, and to give you some statistics and the like. This data that you're asking us to analyse just now, that'll come forward in the report in October. So that's not a seminar, so that will be on record, and we will absolutely break down the different type of social workers caseload and the non-qualified social worker caseload. So it's the full sentence that I would use, because you're absolutely right. Our support staff, our paraprofessionals is a phrase that's used. I don't particularly like it, but it is quite descriptive. So all of our family support workers, social work assistants, etc., do have to achieve qualification, and I'm absolutely proud that they have to. So that will be back in the report in October. That won't be part of the seminar.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And I think the point I was trying to make there is somebody who's worked to get SVQ 4 or even 5. It's been a significant investment in their time and a significant investment by the department, to be fair, and it should really be recognised. So, and that's kind of what I'm getting at here. So when we're breaking down the different, the involvement, the different tiers of input, that we actually know what the, how many have we got SVQ 4, for example, right? How many have we got SVQ 5? Because I think, forgive me if I'm getting it wrong here, but I think some of the moves, if you move to the grow your own social worker, if you've got certain of these qualifications, you don't it's a short track, isn't it? Yeah. So it would be really interesting to find out, and how, and I think what I'm getting at here is, how do we get those in SVQ 2 and 3 to think seriously about SVQ 4? Do we give them the facilities to do it, or do we expect them to do it in their own time? And it's, I think if we're going to look at developing the workforce, we need to look at developing the whole workforce.
Yeah, thank you. And I think as a committee and the team here, we very, very much value everybody that has an SVQ qualification, because they're massively important in our communities at the moment. So great praise to all of them. But over to yourself, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, and absolutely valid. At the committee in October, not only will we bring the Setting the Bar report, but we're also due to bring our 6-monthly update for our workforce plan, which goes into all of that detail, the different options that we have. And yes, we do provide, the payments and the courses, etc., for people that need to do that. So Avril is kind of leading on coordinating the work around the workforce plan. So that report will come back in October. So that'll sit quite nicely along Setting the Bar and give you the whole picture.
Okay, and lastly, yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hold this, but I believe there's a specific or a part of the workforce who have to lose money, right, if they want to go onto the trainee social worker scheme from where they are when they're graded as staff, and that's the group of people where we shouldn't be taking money off them to help them to get to better their life qualifications, is we should be building on what they've got, and it's just again, I appreciate it's probably not in the gift of this committee, it's probably elsewhere budget-wise we're going to have to do that, but I really feel that if you're sitting there with SVQ 4 and you want to go and do I don't know what it's CQSW now, or a degree or whatever it is, that you actually you get encouraged to do it, not punished financially for doing it.
Yeah, understood. I'll ask Avril to answer that, please. Thanks, Avril.
Thanks, Chair. As part of our career pathway, and that will form part of the report that comes in October, it's looking at the career pathway of all our staff, from care coordinators, senior care coordinators, our cleaners, our domestic assistants, right up to social workers. So that career path will follow them through, and we've looked at the costings for the qualifications as well, and we've removed the reduction in the banding when our staff, so to avoid the retention of our staff.
Thanks, Avril. And moving on to Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's page 41 on the local plan, the local government benchmark framework. It's to do with the percentage of carers who feel supported to continue in their role, and 34% does feel like a small number. Is there any chance that we could have a breakdown as to why carers feel they're not supported, and could this be a lack of respite care, and what can we do to support carers more? Thank you.
Yeah, that figure was noted, Councillor Johnson. I think it's quite important that we look into that a wee bit more. I have been visiting Dumfries Hospital lately and noticed that we do have a fantastic Carers for Carers unit there, so we might need a little bit more work to promote that service, actually, because I hadn't realised how extensive it was, and it's very impressive, actually. We don't have as much as that in Ayrshire, I might say, but I think these are really good points. So, Rebecca, are you able to come in on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. As you say, we do have a carer centre up at DGRI. We also have a good carer centre in Dumfries Town Centre, and we have really close links with that group. We're trying at the moment to make access for carers into support services easier. So I know that the Carers Centre, for example, have made that much easier, and are doing some roadshows to get out to speak to people. In terms of, some of you, probably all of you will be aware, we're doing a piece of work in Health and Social Care Partnership called Right Care, Right Place, and that is looking at what potential there is to deliver not only support services, but in some instances different housing options. And they have made specific points to reach out to carers to ensure that we're getting their views, and that's also in the piece of work of people's life experience, lived experiences. We're doing an awful lot more now to ensure that we're bringing the views of people on board. So the number of carers has probably increased because of COVID, for example, and I think that's reflected in those figures. And it's just about now trying to align the different supports and the services to meet the demand that's currently ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are you happy with that, Maureen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I think it's very positive in terms of going forward, and it's helpful to know that the Right Care, Right Place report is being worked upon, Rebecca, and I know that's coming to us in the September committee. So, to the IG, what did I say?
You said us. It's IGB.
IGB, I meant to say. Pardon me, everybody. Right. Okay, I think did you have a legacy hand up? Councillor, has it gone? Is there anyone still with a legacy hand up? Yeah, Councillor Slater, you're lowering it. Thank you so much. We can now go to the recommendation. Members are asked to agree the social work service plan for 23-24 as set out in paragraphs 4.3 to 4.7 and included as the appendix, and that has the amendments in it which you've all received now. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, thank you. So we now go to item 6 committee, which is the Chief Social Work Officer's Annual Report 2022-23, which was prepared by Stephen Morgan. You'll see it's a massively detailed report. The remit of social work services is huge, never mind the work they have to do alongside the IGB and the healthcare sector. But before we go into this agenda item, I'd like to point out to members that the service has been incredibly busy, as we've already alluded to, with more and more pressures and complexities. However, I'd like to commend the committed workforce. And on an aside, our Provost, Councillor Maureen Johnson, has attended a number of 7-day centres over the past few months. Our Vice Chair has been visiting the day centre in Stranraer for the coronation, and I've been out visiting the 2 community payback centres, and I'd just like to commend the work from every single employee that I met across the sector to say, you know, you can see the commitment. So, Stephen, thank you for the report, and I think we'll now go into it. And would like to say also that the report provides members with the performance of the social work service in respect of the key duties and responsibilities for which the Chief Social Work Officer has responsibility for. The information is all in detail in the appendix and highlights many of the challenges the service has faced, along with good practice, and also acknowledges the work of all the staff, as I've said before, within the service. So can I open it up to members for discussion, please? Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I appreciate this is partly Lillian finished off and polished, or whatever we want to call it, by Stephen at this stage. And I'd like to just echo your comments there about the staff. I've never had a negative report for any time I've had to contact them. I would suggest in almost 13 years now, nearly I've been a councillor, or 12 years I've been a councillor. I do appreciate this is a report that's for elsewhere, and it's a courtesy really more than anything else, letting us see it. It's part of the reporting process, and I think it's a well done to everybody, and it actually gives us a lot of the information we talk about in committee at times, and once we've talked about it once, and we sometimes forget about it, and we need to be reminded it's already been there, it's been done, it's been acted on. So it's just a commendation of the report, and I'd be happy just to move that we accept it and thank them, everybody involved in its compilation.
Thank you very much, Andy. I think the team will really appreciate that, and obviously with your work you've done over the last few years, you're very knowledgeable about it. So thank you for that, and I'm sure the team will be very grateful to receive it. Any other members? Yes, Councillor Scobie, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, just following Andy in terms of that, and again, echoing some of his sentiments, but perhaps saying a bit of disappointment in the annual report in page 69 when it refers to the Health and Social Care Partnership. And it's just a reflection of some of the issues that we've raised in committee and at full council. Indeed, I was disappointed that we didn't recognise in here the value of cottage hospitals and it being a resource, not just the care homes that we can provide. And I do know that there's a report going to the IGB in September that doesn't reflect that either, in my opinion. However, it would have been good to recognise that we did pass a motion, and we do recognise the care homes, or rather the cottage hospitals, as a valuable resource in the community. And it's the communities that recognise that as well, and who are wanting to see them reopened. So I thought we could have had a mention in in the annual report. And it's just another part in terms of poverty and cost of living crisis. And it's really maybe just perhaps a question, because we were going the wrong way, and I think we're still going the wrong way in terms of figures, where it had risen, and I think it's still rising to above 26% of our children who are living in poverty. And that's more than 1 in 4. Almost coming to you know, it's a figure, and it's really just a reflection of how we are tackling this and bringing those figures down, working collaborative with our other departments. It's really just so we get a handle on that, and I would like to have seen something that is saying, look, this is the positive things we're doing to get those figures down, because you know we've kids out there that are going to school, as I said earlier, with a bite of meat in their bellies. They were wondering about where they were going to get their clothes, and we work with various voluntary sectors that provide free school uniforms and so forth. So it's just a reflection on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Scobie. I would like to say as chair that I think every single councillor in this room has probably written to their MSPs, and the MSPs have been writing to everybody at the Scottish Government with regards to the Cottage Hospital situation. I don't think there's one councillor that doesn't support that. So, and we will continue to keep lobbying because, we all know the importance of cottage hospitals and extra beds also for palliative care, which, I'm passionate about. With regards to your other questions, I'll let Councillor Stephen Morgan answer those. Thanks.
Not a councillor yet, thanks, you, Chair. Councillor Scobie, thanks for the observations, but just so we're very clear about this report, this is my statutory report. Lillian Kringle's tenure for almost all of it, let's be honest, and a massive thank you to her. Would be remiss of me not to say that here, as well as reference it in the report itself. So, cottage hospitals not part of my statutory remit and not for me to report in this report. As Councillor Ferguson said, this does belong to us, Councillor Ferguson. We're part of the process, but we're actually a key and intrinsic part of the process in terms of where it goes to. It goes to the Scottish Government, so the Scottish Government can then look at the pressures across the whole social work system and the successes across the whole social work system. So in relation to cottage hospitals, it's not referenced because it's not my duty, it's not my specific and legal responsibility. And similarly, we make reference to poverty because poverty is the single biggest factor that impacts on social work service users. I hate that term. People who we work with. It's the biggest factor because if you're disabled and you live in poverty, poverty has a bigger impact. If you have an illness or an addiction, poverty has a bigger impact. So that's why that's referenced here, because we do have something to do about that. But clearly, that's something that's also bigger than the social work service. It's bigger than the council. There are international factors, the invasion of Ukraine by the Russians, cost of living crisis, etc. So we attempt to alleviate the impacts of poverty on the most vulnerable as much as we can through the services that we provide. And Chair, if I may, I am aware that Councillor Slater wants to come in, but whilst I've got the floor, a massive thank you to the whole team over there who put most of the work into getting this report in the form it is, because I don't do the legwork. Councillor Ferguson did allude to that. But also to every single member of social work and social care staff in Dumfries and Galloway, not just those that are employed directly by the council, but also all of the third sector, independent sector providers, because as Chief Social Work Officer, I also have a responsibility for ensuring, appropriate governance arrangements and quality there as well, where issues come. So just a huge thank you to the staff. We've spoken about many of the issues today in relation to the pressures and the complexity, and I sometimes don't know how the staff continue to deliver what they do deliver. So from me, it's a heartfelt, massive thank you to all of the staff involved in the whole system. So thank you for giving me a little bit of leeway there. I know I probably shouldn't have taken it, but that's me.
Yeah, I'd like to come in on the back of that, Stephen, actually. I know every single one of us in this room have been in an emergency situation as councillors over the weekends and in holidays. Every single time that call has been answered, and every single time someone has got back to me, and I'm sure other councillors here in this meeting and across the board, on that same day within the hour, and that has to be praised highly because, the pressures are so big, especially in emergency situations. So thank you, Stephen. Okay, do we have any other councillors that are wishing to speak? Yeah, Councillor Slater, please. Thank you,
Chair. It was just to say thank you, Stephen, and your team, and for this very extensive report. You all do a good job, and it's a very difficult job. I'm aware of that. I think it's one of the most difficult things to do within a council. So I thank you all really for doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Slater. So I think that's everybody clear, yes? We can now go to the recommendation. Members are asked to consider the performance of the social work service in respect of key duties and responsibilities for which the Chief Social Work Officer has overall responsibility for, as detailed in the appendix. Item number 7 is the PPC minute from the 19th of April 2023, which I'm sure you've all read, and that is for noting. Item number 8 is any other business. I don't have any other business, but thank you very, very much for your attendance today and participation. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you, Chair.